All right, gang, well, here we are, another installment with the dirt bike community. We're here at the Edge Power Sports in Draper, Utah. Got Jeff Boone's bike here. We're gonna do some SAGs, suspension setting on it. We're also gonna dial in and fiddle with the clicker adjustments and actually get him more familiar with being able to adjust those on his own. Unfortunately, that part is always kind of a dark art, and it's really kind of seat of the pants, how you want the bike to feel for you. I've talked to a lot of clients over the years, and one of the things that really kind of stymies me is I've actually heard kind of the same little story. I've ridden the bike for all these years, and I never touched the suspension. Unfortunately, that means they missed out. They were riding the manufacturer's bike, and they weren't riding their bike. So we're going to make this Jeff's bike instead of Husqvarna's. So some things we would need to talk about is setting the sag on the bike. One of the reasons why we want to set the sag is that's actually going to keep the bike suspended at a proper height with our rider weight. Now, depending on if you're riding with a lot of gear, a backpack, depending on what style of gear, maybe you've got some heavier, lighter boots, whatever you prefer riding with or whatever your gear setup is, you want to adjust your sag height for that. So I've asked Jeff to come in with his riding boots, his backpack, and I think we'll be able to get him pretty close to that setup on it. So the first thing we're going to do, if we can swing over onto this side of the bike, one of the things that we want to look at on our bikes, some manufacturers, mainly Husqvarna, Husqvarna, KTM, and Gas, is they actually have a permanent sag mark impregnated in the plastic work. It's actually a little mark right here on the fender work, and it actually says sag. That's a permanent measuring spot to where you can always adjust your suspension from there. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get the bike off the ground to where the back tire's completely hanging, the suspension is completely relaxed, and we're going to do some measurements. Now there's a few ways of doing it. I'm going to do it kind of the cheaty way, but I'm going to show you some ways that you can just do it with a standard tape measure, or with, I actually prefer a metric tape measure because it will calculate a little easier in millimeters. So we're going to do that. So let me show you some of our features here that we've got. I'm just going to roll my little rolly cart here. So you can either use just a standard tape measure. This one is my actual sag suspension tape measure. It's actually measures in millimeters and standard. Now this is what I really prefer because it makes your job so much easier. It's just a sag tool, okay? It's actually got your marks on it. Ideally what you're looking for is about 100 to 105 millimeters of sag. Now that's pretty standard on the KTMs, the Husqvarnas, and the Gases. Depending on your brand of motorcycle, you may want to do a little research and find out what the standard sag is on that. Most motorcycles, you're going to find that it's 30 millimeters of overall sag or overall travel of that motorcycle. So if you can calculate out what that full length is and then minus that 30 from there, then you're pretty good to go. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to take our sag measurement and we're going to set our tool at 0. So you can either go center the axle if you don't have an axle plug, or you can lock it in right here. Since he doesn't have the axle plug, we're just going to set it here. We're going to adjust our measurement tool at 0. And you just lock that little pointer down, and that's going to be fixed for you. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to loosen up the collar on the shock for the spanner wrench ring. So we can swing around this way. We can kind of peer into the bike a little bit. Some bikes have locking collars, some don't. Some actually have a double ring that you just loosen one and then you can turn the other one. Now, if your bike actually has dual lock rings on it, basically if the upper one spins while you're spinning the lower one, that's okay because you're still adjusting it. Just get a last little knock on that upper lock ring and that'll cinch everything in. So we're just going to take our Allen wrench here. We're going to loosen that upper lock collar. Now that spanner ring is nice and free. Okay, now there's a couple ways you can do this. Typically, I find that on the Husqvarnas and the KTMs and the Gases, sometimes it's kind of a bear to get a spanner wrench in there. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll kind of cheat and we'll just actually spin that with a screwdriver. So we can get you all dialed in from there. So now that we've got that zeroed out on our measuring tool, we've got that loosened up, we're going to set the bike on the ground. And here's where I'm going to ask my cohort Randy to help us out a little bit. So he gets to be a famous star tonight. So Jeff, I'm going to have you hop on your bike. Randy's going to balance you from the front end of the bike. I'm going to have you standing in your attack position. So balls of your feet Yep.
Get my bag too.
Yeah, grab your bag. Yep, that'll add the weight to it. Now the reason we want to be standing on the motorcycle is that's really where we spend the majority of the time. So you don't ever really want to adjust the sag while you're sitting on it. If it was a sport bike, something like that, yeah. But since we're on our dirt bikes, we want to be in a standing position. So Jeff's got all his goodies on here. All right, so balls of your feet, standing, a little bit of chest over your number plate. Perfect. I'm going to take one more measurement. So just off that 0 point. Wow, Jeff, you're actually right on the numbers. You're sitting at 105 millimeters of sag. So really that's what we're looking for, is just that amount of sag when he comes down on the bike, is that 100 and 105, okay? Good deal. Actually, let's double check that one more time, Jeff. I apologize. I may have misread that. Yeah, so go ahead and hop on and give it one little bounce. Perfect. Yeah, you're pretty dialed. You're actually sitting right at about 103 millimeters of sag. So yeah, that's pretty golden right there. So we don't have to do much on the adjustment on that. Now, some things you're gonna wanna be mindful of, gang, when you are adjusting your sag. Usually this takes about 3 people to do. The pilot, someone running the tool, and someone balancing. One thing you're going to discover is after you've got that first sag number, that 100 to 105, depending on the model of bike that you got, then you're going to want to measure your free sag. And this is actually going to tell you if you have to actually respring. So say for instance, we really had to crank down that spring to get that ideal 100 to 105 millimeters. Then you're going to do one more measurement. You don't want to pull by the back fender or where that measurement mark is, because that's going to change your measurement. So ideally you're going to have someone right from one side of the bike or the other. So I'm going to pop this up, and they're going to pull it all the way up to 0 to where the back tire is almost off the ground. They're going to set their tape measure and measure from that point and let it sag naturally. You're looking for about 30 to 35 millimeters of free sag. Now let's say for instance you really had to bear that spring down to get that 100 to 105, and then when you do your free sag, it's only sagging about 10 or 15 millimeters. That means you have to actually go to a heavier spring. And that's common, just depending on our weights of the bike and what we get into, okay? So let me throw that up on the center stand, because when you are adjusting your spring, you definitely want load off the rear wheel. That way that spring will turn a little easier. And if it's maybe a little earlier model and it looks like maybe those threads are a little gummy, it's okay to take a little detail brush and kind of clean up some of those threads, even a little spritz of WD, just so that all rotates properly, okay? Good deal. Okay, so if we take a close look in here, Carlos, if you don't mind kind of swinging in here, we're going to take a look at the spanner wrench ring. Now, if we did have to adjust that, we could either sneak a bendable spanner wrench in here. I can get sneaky with a screwdriver, and we're going to manipulate it just by turning the spring and that spanner wrench ring at the same time. I'll just count my counts so we don't throw them off a little bit. And then you're going to do your measurement. So you put the bike back down on the ground, see where your measurement is. If you have to add or subtract, then you go from there, okay? Or if you want to get a little spanner wrench in there. In fact, here's some different styles of spanner wrenches. So we've got more of a fixed spanner wrench here. This is an attachment that you can hook up to a ratchet. That way you can spin it either direction, flip it over, go the other direction if you need to. So you've got some options there as well. I would really recommend maybe investing in a nice suspension tool. The cool part is it'll run you about maybe 30 bucks, and you can charge your buddies to set their sag too. So something to kind of think about. Right?
So sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're good. No.
When you were measuring it, it was turned around. I know you guys are filming at the same time. So those that are live didn't see it because kind of they saw it from
Sure,
behind.
I'll spin this around just so we can kind of see the gist of what was going on there. Perfect. So you can either use measuring tape, you can measure this out, memorize or write down your number. I would definitely write it down because you're going to have a lot of numbers going through your head and you'll always forget what it is. So note that first measurement down so that way it doesn't move on you. That's one of the brilliant things about the Husqvarnas and the KTMs and the GasGases is they were smart enough to put a permanent mark in there to where you can always reference from it.
So you measure from there down to
center of the axle, or if you've got an axle plug, you can actually lock your little pin right in here, and then you're gonna set 0 from that point. So you can adjust this and then just lock this down. If you have mini bikes, you can spin it over and you've got a lower set scale on that. So we're gonna set this right at 0 mark. Gonna lock our pin down, or if you're running a tape measure, just measure that and write that measurement down.
Okay, so show me.
Yeah. So right now, we're set right at 0.
Okay.
Okay, now when I get on the bike with it on the ground, ideally we're looking for about anywhere from 100 to 105 millimeters of sag on it. Okay. Now I can probably guarantee I'm probably going to be sitting probably about 90-ish or somewhere right around there. So we'll see where it looks and go from there.
All right. Randy might have to help me.
All right. Set that down. Now I'm a shorter guy, gang, so this helps out too. If you are packing your bike up the way I do, I just don't have the legs to get it up this height. Put your bike in first gear, and that way that wheel doesn't roll on you when you are lifting it up on the ground. All right, so ideally balls of your feet, a little bit of chest over your number plate, and give it a little bounce like that, just kind of settle the suspension in. So
then,
Jeff, go ahead and measure that out now.
Okay.
Just tell us what our number is going to be at.
Okay, how does this thing move?
You don't need to adjust that.
Nope, just see where it's at.
Reads on that line.
Oh, I see. Just right here.
Yep.
It is 70.
70? Yeah, so we'd have to lighten it up quite a bit for me. So.
Okay.
But then again, I'm not wearing any gear, no backpack, no helmet, no boots,
right.
All those things. So if that were the case, we'd have to take that spring tension out just to get the ride height set right. So,
Okay.
So that would be the case on me if I were riding the bike. So,
I see.
So yeah, that's pretty much how you set that up. Hopefully that makes things clear on that. And if there's any ever questions or anything,
that's really helpful.
email
because
in and
I know there's a lot of people that are like me that just
suspension
don't know
is a dark art. Yeah, it's definitely a dark art. So I hope that kind of clarifies on how to set up your sag. So once again, just get your bike up on the stand. You're going to take a base measurement, note that measurement down. Then you're going to get your pilot on the bike, see where it's measuring out from there. And ideally, you're looking for about 30% of overall sag of the full distance of the measurement. Fortunately, I've got the spec numbers for the Husqvarna, so it's 100 to 105 millimeters of sag, so it kind of works out pretty good on that part. And then remember, you want to do your free sag measurement, so then you're just going to set the bike on the ground. Actually, let's check that out, Jeff. Let's see where we're sitting at. So what I'm going to have you do is you're just going to put that right in there, and you didn't move that, right?
Nope.
Okay, don't move that. I'm going to pull the bike all the way up to, it'll be read 0, and then you're going to read how much it sags down naturally, okay? So hang on to that. And ideally, you want to pull back from a good solid base versus the fender, because that can change the measurement. So we're just going to measure up, set that at 0.
Okay.
Okay. Where are we sitting at?
At 30.
Perfect. Yeah, you're set right, man. Yeah, that's right where you want to be. Awesome. Good deal. Let's put this back up here. Yeah, so ideally, your free sag, you're looking for about 30 to 35 millimeters of free sag. Yeah, you're set, man. Good deal. All right, well, I hope that kind of clarifies up on how to set up that suspension a little bit. I know we are live, but we're going to kind of break this up into a couple little segments here. So if anybody does have any questions, feel free to chime in or give us a shout at the Edge Power Sports. We can definitely help you out on any of that information and get you dialed in. We can also do respringing. We've got drop-in cartridges with 8 kits. Those will really make you a pro rider out there. So there's a lot of cool stuff out there in the suspension market.